Meeting. Tonight, we do not have any public hearings scheduled. We do have one matter under new business and a couple of matters listed under old business. On the new business, we have requests to release funds from the Enchanted Forest. This project will review a request by the project proponent of the Enchanted Forest residential development. This project received definitive subdivision approval and planned residential development special permit by the Planning Board on November 17, 2003. The request is to release all remaining funds held for performance. Aaron, do you want to comment on this first, or do we have somebody else here to speak in regards to this project this evening?
Yeah, I can. Mark Ginsberg, who's the developer, I actually just talked to him a little while ago, had hoped to make the meeting tonight, but he was double booked with planning boards. He's at Tewksbury's tonight, so he wasn't able to show up. But I can go over the memo that I sent out to the board. Essentially, I think the remaining item that was outstanding was the reconstruction of a sidewalk along, Charlotte Road and Frida Lane have been completed. The developer basically paid the contractor to get that done in the last 3 months, so that was one of the remaining items to be addressed in the conditions. Also, I think everything else was that the board may recall that it was probably going back a year now or so, that there was an amendment to the approvals to kind of clarify one of the conditions. It was condition 3 for maintenance of, I think it was the third drainage pond, and that condition's been dealt with. There's a deed, I think actually included in the packet. There's a deed that's been submitted to the registry with the language for maintenance of that pond to be maintained by the trustees, but the association, the homeowners association. And so that's essentially it. I also included on there, just as by way of background, a memo from George Proikis, again back in 2007, just kind of outlining the remaining conditions at that time. So from what my understanding is, they've pretty much addressed all their conditions, and the city engineers department has indicated that they've built everything to the subdivision standard. So,
thank you. Any of the board members have any questions or comments?
I just have one, Mr. Chairman. Looking over the deed that was transferred to the Friends of the Lowell Drake at Tingsboro State Forest, it does appear that it reserved to the homeowners trust the easement to enter onto the property to maintain the drainage system, and also reserved to the city of Lowell the right to enter the property and an easement in the event the homeowners trust does not maintain the drainage system. The city can step in, make whatever repairs or corrections they need, and charge back to the homeowners trust. So it appears that that's appropriate, and it looks like it was deeded to the Friends of the Lowell Drake at Tingsboro State Forest, Inc., which is a corporation, I think, formed back in 2004 with Mehmet Ali in charge at one point. I don't know who's involved in it now, but it appears like everything's in order. So I would have no problem with that.
Thank you. Any of the board members? Any questions? No? Having none? So, Aaron, and Division of Plan and Development is satisfied as well?
yeah, everything looks like it's in order. So,
Okay, and the city engineers, you said, was on board, so everything seems to be in order, so?
yeah, I didn't include the email, but I did receive an email from the department saying that everything's
All right.
good for them.
So I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to release the remaining funds held for performance in this matter.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. The matter is approved. Moving along, we have two matters under old business this evening. One's Lowe's on Chelmsford Street. The board will review a request by National Development to assess all conditions placed on the approved site plan for development on the property located on 790, 816, 824, 836, 826.1, all on Chelmsford Street here in the city of Lowell, and ensure that the conditions have been met by the board's expectations. May we hear the case for the applicant, if we could, please?
Elides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell. Good evening.
Good evening.
all. Mr. Chairman, we're here this evening, as you indicated from the notice that you read, to just bring the board up to date on what's happened with Lowe's. I'm sure probably most of you have seen the development at one point or another along the way. We're getting close to the 0 hour, and Sherry will give you a little more of the details on that. I've passed out to you this evening little notebooks that everybody has, and in there you have a letter from our engineers outlining all of the work that was done in relation to the conditions, et cetera. If you recall, Mr. Chairman and members, I think this was, as I said to the ZBA last week, probably the most conditioned project I've ever seen. I think the combination of your conditions and the zoning board conditions, and they imposed yours, as you know, into theirs, there were more than 50 conditions.
Right. I think we had 30-something, if I remember correctly.
Right. We believe that we've substantially met all of those, and of course it's important to us to be able to get occupancy permits and things like that along the way. Our financing companies, Lowe's, Sherry actually represents National Development, who's the developer who put the whole project together. They've got to turn it over to Lowe's shortly with an understanding that everything's been accomplished. So I'm going to let her give you a little rundown of what she has done to make sure a lot of those, or essentially all of those items have been done. I know that we've been working with Aaron and the other people at DPD along the way as well, and I think Aaron has essentially reports to give to you. There's also in your packet a report from the traffic engineer.
Yes.
So I think we have most of that stuff covered. If you remember, when I first came to your board, which was in 2006 on this project, believe it or not, I was with a gentleman by the name of Brian Clancy. And as I told the zoning board last week, now we have his baby sister here.
Big sister.
A big sister. No, younger
10 years
sister.
old.
Who took over for Brian, and she wants to give you a little report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am sort of batting cleanup on this project, and I don't have as much history as you do or some of the other people in the room, but where I see my charge right now is that, you know, it is a fairly complex project that has a number of conditions, not just with your board, but with other boards. So what I'm trying to do is a little due diligence as I'm getting up to speed and also tying up the project and going to each of the interested boards and parties to make sure that they feel that we have satisfied the conditions as I interpret them and as our engineer interprets them. So in that vein, we went last week to the Zoning Board of Appeal just to kind of go through their conditions and discuss those conditions. We've met with Bob Camacho because there are a number of operating conditions and other things that relate to life safety and construction of the building itself and not so much the site development, which is kind of more your area. And so tonight we wanted to come to you and kind of revisit some of the conditions. In anticipation of that, I prepared that letter for you and basically enumerated the conditions one by one and gave you some backup for each of the conditions and some discussions as to why we think, you know, we've achieved what you had in mind. And you know, there were some traffic calming measure things and some other things that required action from the city council if the traffic people wanted to do it. So there was some back and forth of things that, you know, of your conditions that weren't strictly cut and dried, like, you know, the fence shall be black. I mean, that's pretty easy. So I just felt that it warranted that kind of a thing. And just to give you a little update on our schedule, I would say we're 99% finished with the site. There's a little cleanup over there, but we're 99% done with the site improvements. The construction of the building is really, really coming to a close. They're probably close to 90% done on that as well. They're working very closely with the building inspector's office and the fire department. The plan right now is to try to get an occupancy certificate or maybe a temporary occupancy certificate on January 5th so they can start to put the fixtures and stock the store with the material that they need. In order to turn the store over to Lowe's on January 19th, thereabouts, which I think is the day after Martin Luther King Day. And then Lowe's will start doing like their training, and they won't be open yet, but they'll have people in there that are getting familiar with the store, and they'll be doing some hiring, and they'll be doing some employee training programs. And right now, they're scheduled to have their grand opening the last week in February, plus or minus February 26th is what they're looking at. So, it's the holiday season, January 5th is really not that far away. It's only the Tuesday after the new year, and so we think that this was a good chance to come in and just, I don't know if you've had a chance to absorb any of the material that we've given you or if anything's come to mind, but, we just wanted to kind of give you a chance to ask us questions and give us a chance to ask you questions.
Thank you.
I did want to mention one more thing, Mr. Chairman. I received a call late last week regarding a problem, or what appeared to be a problem, with some of the landscaping on the Chelmsford Street side. And though I didn't get to meet him before this evening, I know Sherry had worked and met with Mr. Briere, who's here this evening, who had some concerns. He does live right across the street from the garden center, and there's a question of how the landscaping will be finished. So you'll hear about that. I know he would like to say some words to the board too, but suffice it to say that we're willing to work with him and make sure that he's satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Did you get has Rachel's memo gone to the members of the?
Yes.
We have two memos here. One from the design planner as well as from the transportation engineers. We have both. Do you have any comments on either of those?
No, it's just that
Okay.
Rachel Zisker, she's also met with some of the neighbors
Okay.
as well as I have, and she's aware of the issue, and I think what maybe there was a perception on the part of some neighbors that it would be a thicker planting screen, but that through the design process, they had introduced some ornamental trees that, were not, they were deciduous, so there's some kind of holes in there when you have this time of year. And that was the way the plan evolved, and we're now saying that, if it's the right thing to do, we'd like to step up and add additional plantings in there. Rachel's gonna give us some direction on that, and then, obviously that would have to be in spring, but, we're willing to work with her on that.
Okay, thank you.
So that's about it. I think Aaron has, a report to give you
Yeah,
as well.
we'll get to
at some
him.
point.
Yep. Aaron's given us some information as well. What I'll do is I'll hear from this gentleman as well, too, and then I'll come back to Aaron once you're completed, and
I was just-
anybody else that likes to speak.
I was just
going to
say, we're all set from our
Okay.
side, but
Thank
glad
you.
to answer any
All right,
questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak on this project? Sir, if you may, come to the microphone, just give us your name and address for the record if you would, please, sir.
Yes. My name is Bruce Briere. I live at 793 Johnson Street, Lowell. I live right across from the Lowell's development, and I have two pictures here I'd like to present to the board.
You come right up, please, if you would, please, sir.
And this one's outside on the stairwell. As you can see in the pictures, it's pretty close. Where they're going to have the front entrance of the greenhouse there. When that trail is moved, you see that trail is not going to be there. That's going to be removed. And then there's the entrance to the greenhouse right there. So as people come to buy their supplies and pick it up, that's where they're going to be, right there, in my view. And this is why I like to have some kind of a screening. I don't think the way that it's done now is acceptable. Well, it's not acceptable to me. And I've talked to other people in the neighborhood, and there are other people that feel the same way, but a lot of the people in the neighborhood, they get up in the morning, they go to work, they work all day, they come home, they're tired. They don't have time to come down here and do all this. It's a lot of work. Now, I called a lot of people in the city about this because I found out that they eliminated the wall. There was supposed to be a privacy wall there. And I was never notified about it. I was told that all they were sent out in the mail. Well, I said, could you prove it to me? Because I never received one, a notice in the mail to the abutters. Well, come to find out 2 days later, they said, oh, no, we're sorry. We made a mistake. You were never notified. Then they said, well, with the situation being the way it is, they didn't need to notify us. So that's where that's where I'm standing. So I started calling everybody down to City Hall, you know, jumping on their cages, you know. I got a few responses. I talked to the city manager, Bernie Lynch, and I talked to, of course, Rita Mercier. She's always willing to help us out, you know. And a bunch of other people. I talked to Barocas and Rachel Kisser. I talked to the lawyers. And we're willing to work with them, you know. I mean, we're neighbors. We have to. I mean, we got to come up with some kind of solution to make it a little more compatible for me and the people around the neighborhood and the store. We're going to have to live with the store, you know. And I'm sure if I waited until the store moved in, and I went to the manager, I'd get him to do something about it, you know. But so we might as well do it now, you know, while everybody's agreeing. They have the fence there. Okay, there's a black chain link fence there. And I've seen slats that they put in the fence. I have them on the side, one side of my house. I put slats in, you know, the feathered type. And they almost black out everything, but not quite. But they're better. It's better than nothing. It's something that they can do right now. They don't have to wait until the spring. They cut. The problem with the landscaping is that there's only a little strip, about 5 feet. How much landscaping are you going to be able to put in there? You know, they cut it right up to the sidewalk. As a matter of fact, when they did the landscaping, they didn't dig down. They just piled the dirt on top, the loam, planted the trees, and then piled more dirt on it. And that's why it looks like a hill. Now, if you go down there in the wintertime, the snowplows are going to come by, and they're going to get a couple of bad storms, and what's going to happen to all the shrubbery? The snow is going to go on the shrubbery, you know? It's going to lean it over. But, I mean, that's just a thought, you know. I'm trying to alleviate a few problems, you know. But I think that they're willing to work with us. I found that out, you know. They will do something. They said they'll post a bond. And Mr. Eliadis said he'd help me, and I think we can come up with a solution. And I'd like to have something done. You know, how would you like to look out your front door and see people loading up their fertilizer in the spring? You know, I mean, come on. And I'm sure in the future, this is not going to be the last of the problems. The problems seem to come up as time goes by, like anything else, you know? And maybe if we can solve this problem, if problems come up in the future, we can work them out. You know, try to make everybody happy. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Here, I want you to hang on to your pictures. We had a chance to view them. I'd like you to have those back. And I'm sure you probably have them memorized in your mind, these pictures, where you see them on such a daily, every day. So, sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Coleman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. Wish to be recorded in favor of this project. It is a great project for the city of Lowell, and it really does something wonderful for the entire neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here this evening want to speak in regards to this project? Hearing none, okay. At this point in time, I will turn it over to our associate planner, Aaron Clausen. Aaron, any comments you have? You want anything to the board in regards to behalf of planning and development?
Yes, I can certainly do that. I don't suspect you want to run through each condition, since it is 32 conditions, right. But we've obviously had a chance to look through them and go through each one in quite a bit of detail. And generally speaking, that I would say all of them have been met. And I also, referring to the memo from Rachel Kisker, who is our new design planner, has been working most closely with Sherry and George on the landscaping matter. As she points out in the memo, the landscape plan has basically been planted. You know, they've developed the landscape plan substantially to what was approved. There's a couple outstanding things, including perennials haven't come up yet. It's winter; they're not going to come up right now. There's a small piece of lawn that will be planted in the spring. Other than that, this item that we've discussed already is something that's kind of over and above the landscape plan. And National Grid and Sherry has been willing to work with us and the neighbors, and to make sure that there's something that goes in place to help improve that. So that is the one element that continues to be worked out. You've also, as has been referenced, have in the packet a memo from Jeff Gomes that outlines both the ZBA and planning board conditions, and these relate obviously to all the traffic mitigation. There was a fair amount in the condition list, but as you'll find in that memo, basically they've met all the conditions that are related to traffic. And then there's no other memo for this per se, but they've, in the letter from Sherry, as you read through a lot of the wastewater in terms of stormwater improvements that were part of the condition lists have been met. There's a signage, several conditions related to signage. We've worked with National Development over the last 6 months to a year, I would say, and the signage has been approved by the design planner and is pretty much in place, and it meets those conditions. So the only other thing that continues that is being worked out a little bit is some additional lighting that is above the garden center, but it's still under construction, so it may meet the condition, but it basically needs to be downward directed. I understand that there's covers that have been ordered for it. It's a burn-in period, so this is just something that we'll have to keep an eye on. Okay. But other than that, all the other conditions of approval have been met.
Thank you. Anything like to comment on, Attorney Leides?
Sherry just wanted
Sure.
to, go ahead.
I just wanted to also let you know that a number of the conditions in your approval related to ongoing operating. You made me think of it when you said lighting, but like, don't run the loudspeaker outside and those kinds of things. And Lowe's has written a letter acknowledging their commitment to those, and they addressed it to the building inspector, but I have a copy of it if you want. I think you got it, Aaron, didn't you?
I think I do have that copy. I know that the trolley, or not the trolley, but the cart operating management system has been included into the record.
Do you want me to give it?
When you give Aaron a
It might
copy,
be
just in
worth
case if
having
you have
it
an
just to
extra one,
have it on
sure.
the
In case, just those addressed the operating.
All right, we'll take that, Aaron, that way we have it on file if need be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Council. Thank you very much. Sure.
Yeah. Good to have.
This is dated to Mr. Camacho, the building commissioner, and dated December 18th, okay?
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention that with regard to Mr. Briere's concerns, obviously I've met with him today for the first time, spoken with him. He's a reasonable gentleman. I'm sure we're going to have no problem working things out. And I'll say one other thing. If any of you are familiar with the Lowe's and their operations and the way they carry on their centers, it's a first-class operation. They're not going to want Chelmsford Street to look shabby either. So I think we're all going to benefit from a nice job when they're totally completed. Not to mention, Mr. Chairman, while we're all thinking about it, I'm proud to say, and I have to say, that having been part of both the Lowe's and the Target operation that have come into this city, the city of Lowell now is blessed with 2 first-class operations and over 500 new jobs in an economy that really can use some new jobs. I think it's wonderful.
I agree with you. I do. And I commend Lowe's for all the work they put through in this project. I mean, this was a big project, and in my mind from day one, I don't think if Lowe's came in, I don't think we would have saw Target. That's my own personal feeling. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think one shadows the other.
Right.
I mean, people look at what's going on before they come to the city for something else. If
Don't
they
have
see
to-
they're having a problem with the planning board and the boards in the city for the bigger project, they might just go down the street. There's a lot of places right down Chelmsford Street, right over the line. Not too far.
Yeah.
Not too far at all.
That's right.
But we appreciate it, yeah. I'm happy to see that all the conditions are met, except for the, like I said, the landscaping here, and I see where it's recommended to us by the design planner that, you know, they have this continue to be worked with, so I'd have no problem. I don't know what the board's comments want to be, but if we could approve what's come before us tonight with the condition to work with the additional landscape and screening plan, and if need be, have it come back to us as a conditional approval, or if it's satisfied, we can always get a report from the Division of Plan and Development. But if any issues come up, we can always bring it right back to us, you know, so that way the board has the final approval if need be. That's just a concern, you know, make sure that everybody's happy and knows exactly what's being done, so. That's just my comment. We'll listen to you, sir, and then I'll see what any of the board members have any further questions.
I just would like to ask, as we've got Mrs. Clancy here, Sherry Clancy, sorry. We have a lot of people in the neighborhood, a lot of young people in the neighborhood, they're looking for jobs. Give them a chance to get a job in the neighborhoods.
It's
They're
not
having
really
a hiring thing, I'm telling you, January 19th, they
You
should
know.
get their little butts down
Well,
there
I'm,
because
I'm saying to the board, there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood need
absolutely.
jobs.
A lot of people in the city, yeah.
Okay.
I do think you have to be 19 to work at Lowe's, though, by the way. Honestly, I think you do.
Sure. Well, probably because I'm the construction issues and,
Yeah.
any of the board members have any comments, or? Mr.
Mr.
Fischel?
Chairman, yeah, if I may just, I think obviously Mr. Bria's concerns, as you look at the pictures, I suspect when the conditions were put together, the outcome, I think everybody thought it was going to look a little different. So I can appreciate the applicant understanding that. And I think that working with DPD, listening to some of the suggestions, I agree with council. I don't think Lowe's wants Chelmsford Street to really look bad as you're approaching that facility, and I'm not quite sure the best treatment there, and I think it's important for everybody to work, and as the chairman suggested, is and then report back to the planning board, I think with the outcome, I think is a reasonable approach, so just my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fischel. Any other, Mr. Lockhart?
I just have a couple comments. First of all, regarding your documentation here, I think you've really done an exceptional job to communicate with us in this way. You know, it was a lot of conditions and a lot of things to follow, and it's
was
nice
a
to
team
look here
effort,
and
Mr.
see it reads status instead of hearing excuses and things like that. So I for one, and I'm sure my colleagues really appreciate what you've done. And secondly, Mr. Briere, after looking at your photographs, I think you do have a legitimate concern, and I just encourage you to work with these people. I'm sure you will come up with an acceptable solution. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. I think the work that's been done out there has been outstanding. It looks great. I think from my perspective, in terms of Mr. Briere's issue, I'm sure you'll be able to work with him. If there was an issue, it can always come back before us. You mentioned the possibility of some privacy slats. You may want to hold off on that for the time being because it doesn't take too long before those slats get beat up and don't look too good. So maybe give a shot at the landscaping, maybe some additional landscaping, see what the spring and summer look like, and if you find that it's not acceptable, you know, speak to Aaron and we can discuss it at that point. But that would be my suggestion, and I agree with my colleagues. I think you've done an exceptional job up there. So thank you very much.
Any further comments? Aaron, you have any further comments or discussion from board members, or?
Nope, I think that covers it. The only other thing that, Member Claremont's suggestion there might be a good idea. There's a discussion of securing a bond or posting a bond. If that's necessary, maybe allowing the Division of Planning and Development to ask for a bond in the case that there's additional work down the line. Not that we would need to, but just have that
Well, we don't need a bond
opportunity.
at this point, then. That'd be conditional
I
in
don't
the
think
future.
at this point, no. There's the only thing that really is outstanding, that is clearly outstanding, is that there's a real narrow strip that needs to be sodded in the springtime. If the case where we decide to do, or that everybody decides to do privacy slats a year from now, you know, maybe that would be a case for it, so.
I think the one thing that we want to be sure is that there's no impediment to getting any occupancy, and that's why we discussed the bond, just so there would be an additional surety. So, I mean, if it makes the board feel more comfortable, you know, to put a $10,000 bond or something for the landscaping strip, I mean, we think that we have satisfied the conditions and that we've built what was on the plan, and we are willing to go ahead and do other things, but we just want to be sure that we're not going to have any impediment to our occupancy. That's what we're really trying to get
So it might be better, you think, to post the bond now, or
Well, that's
commit
what
to the
I'm,
bond now, rather than the uncertainty of maybe we need a bond at
well,
some
I
point
just
in the
think that
future.
right now, we're willing to do it, and if that makes you feel more comfortable that you know something's gonna get done, and everyone has something to call upon at some point if they're not happy, I mean, we're willing to do it, so.
That'll make me feel more comfortable.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine, absolutely.
Aaron, do you have any comments on the bond, or?
No, if they're willing to post a bond now, I just wanted to keep the option open in case it was necessary, but if it's more comfortable for National Grid or National Develop to do it, that's fine.
And usually on the bonds, as council know, we usually have those referred to our law department to make sure they look them over properly, and then the question would be what the amount would be. And usually depends on, what the amount of remaining work would be, and then, double it, triple it, consider what time you have to contract.
Shall we
it
just
out.
work with Aaron on that then, and figuring out the amount, or do you want to set the amount tonight?
I'd let Division of Planning and Development do it, because once they have a better chance to look at it, with us not knowing exactly what that screening is, and then we usually have the engineer look at it, the legal department come up with a realistic figure, and they try to go a little higher in case if we have to contract it out. So that
Okay,
way
that's fine.
And if there's any issue on that bond or on the landscaping, just come right back before the board. We'll try to get you in quick, because it won't be a public hearing, I'm bringing it up on the new business, and we'll get you before the board just to address that single issue. I think that's the only issue. I feel confident the way things have been going so far, that progress has gone so far to this date, and if that's the only remaining issue, hopefully that we have no problem pushing that right through.
Great.
So do we need an approval tonight to vote on the conditions, and let's hold the condition for the landscaping? Aaron, is that basically what they need for the permit to move forward?
To confirm that the
Okay.
conditions have been substantially met to the degree that a certificate of occupancy is warranted at this point.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, that this board vote that the conditions have been substantially met to our expectations, that there will at some point be a bond posted in an amount to be determined by DPD, and that you'll continue to work with Mr. Briere and with the neighbors on the landscaping plan.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and chair votes yes. Good luck, thank you very much. Thank you, sir, for coming down with your concern. That would make a better project for the whole neighborhood and the whole city. We appreciate it.
One more comment, Mr.
Sure,
Chairman.
absolutely.
Merry Christmas to
To you.
the, Happy New Year to the board
Thank you,
and
Counselor.
all the people out there in television land.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Nice meeting
seeing
you,
us
ma'am.
tonight.
Pleasure. Moving along, we do have another matter, which is continuation of a meeting, public hearing that we had last meeting, and this is for 135 Beacon Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Daily Realty Trust for a site plan review and neighborhood character special permit for a project located at 135 Beacon Street. The project proposal includes the rehabilitation of the existing two-family building on site and raising a portion of the existing building along 3rd Street. Two new residential buildings are proposed, one-family duplex on 11,375 square foot parcel, providing 6 parking spaces and a single-family residential building on 6,232 square foot lot with 2 parking spaces. May we hear from the applicant, please?
David Daly from Daily Realty Trust, and the principal of that entity, as well as Daily General Contracting, the company that will be building out the site. I've been before you guys now, if this is going to be the 3rd time. I guess on the last meeting, it appears we had made some really good headway with the neighbors as well as the board. We think we found the plan that had worked. I worked out one of the issues with the direct abutter with regard to the fence, which I have agreed to do so. Then a small problem was flagged with regard to the actual parking, and that a zoning code that had been changed probably in the last year or two that my engineer had missed made it, I guess, illegal to put the parking up front. I'll get into that issue in a couple more minutes, but one of the things I had indicated that night was 2 things, actually. A was the fact that I had presented it was, as indicated previously, it's a Form A lot. It was a Form A development. It was going before you for a special permit for neighborhood character review. I had sat down with the neighbors and went by what per the zoning code originally said that we put the parking in the back, a long driveway in the back, and asphalt on both sides and parking in the back, which would A, take away from green space, B, add to pervious asphalt on the site, increasing stormwater problems. And B, the second issue was that the neighbors had requested the front parking with the pavers, and that would, would absorb the rainwater and add a nicer look. And the second thing was, one of the neighbors had indicated that they didn't want headlights shining in their, the front window as someone was exiting a parking lot early in the morning or late at night. But obviously that was flagged that night, and I had indicated to the board that I'd present the fact that we'd take under consideration going to the ZBA. So we did that. We went to the ZBA and we got approvals last week. So we've had discussions, and there's a few other notes and one or two other issues that have arisen since then, some emails and correspondence between Aaron and myself. And we can get into that in a minute. I don't know if we should get to that before we get to the other issue that I'd like to present to the board, which is the bigger problem here with regard to that zoning amendment that was changed a couple years ago. And that was the parking in the front. And I told Aaron, and I made it clear, I've seen those developments too, that there's a reason why that was done. And I could see why when they put these developments together back in the early, you've seen them all around the city where there's 4 or 5 cars stacked in front of a 2-car or even a 1-car with the parking underneath. And it really led to some problems with congestion in the front of these developments. The issue was that they didn't allow you guys any discretion into having a say in that. And the more interesting thing is what I did was I presented it to the neighborhood because it was going under the neighborhood character review. And so the neighborhood character review basically, and I can read that regulation if I want to, but it basically says you're here to try to mirror to a degree the associating neighborhood, the house styles, and the way that the actual houses are laid out. What is interesting, there's no other house in that neighborhood that has a parking in the back. And I had to go before the zoning board to get parking in the front, or actually it's in the side of the house, which corresponds every other house in the neighborhood. And I actually took pictures. Like I told the zoning board, I didn't get a chance. I was just too busy this week as well. But I can show you pictures. You can go out there, you're driven by yourself, that every other house in that area has parking to the front or the side. So on one hand, we're here before you to go before neighborhood character review, and then we're being stymied by the fact that I can't do what we should do because of certain zoning regulations. During some conversations with Aaron, I think that discussion has come up within the DPD. I would like to see that amendment made in the zoning regulations so that someone like myself doesn't have to go through that similar situation, and that you, the board, the people that are entrusted to make those decisions, the people that are entrusted to do the best by both the developer, most importantly, the neighborhood, give that discretion to make that decision. So that's my position on the thing. And I think it's ultimately left up to you guys based on the actual proposal and not on a set of regulations that bind you guys. So that's my position on that. In the meantime, we've had some correspondence in the last week or two, I'd say, with some, I would describe as minor issues with regard to the development. And I don't know if, Aaron, you want to go into detail on those, or you want me to, you guys?
I'll let you address them first, and we'll come back with Aaron. Excuse me.
There was like 5 or 6 things that you had sent me the other day, Aaron, and I made copies. We're in a new home, and I have to go down. We're just going through some internet problems and printing problems and stuff, so I forgot them downstairs in a different office. So what had happened was essentially he had requested if I was going to abide by some of these regulations to take under advisement. I think you guys have them under there. The only issue I saw was twofold, was actually just one, really, was the sidewalk. When I went out there to actual measure, that 2-family doesn't fall under the purview really to a degree, I guess, of the planning board. So we didn't do actual real setbacks on that property. Everything is to scale. And I went out there when I was laying out the sidewalk with my site foreman, and once we incorporated the 5-foot sidewalk, the 2.5-foot grass plot, the 6-inch curb, we're about 16 inches away from the side of this fieldstone foundation that sits up probably 4 to 5 feet above grade. It is a grade, it's a pretty dramatic grade on the third street side. So once you excavate for that retaining wall, because this is a grade issue, I'd have to put a retaining wall up along 3rd Street, which is, I think is a blight. To look at I'd be honest with you, I have to put up a concrete retaining wall. But the issue is when I go to excavate for that, I have to excavate for a 2-foot opening for the excavation for the wall. I risk the integrity of the fieldstone foundation, and that's something that I don't really feel like taking on the responsibility of that. We do our own site work. The other issue is, and again, it's a legal issue, is the enforcement of this condition if it was imposed on this development. And the problem is, I'm selling that property. They, like many people, had some issues with some financing. It looks like, I think they've been cleared up as of today or tomorrow. And they've made it clear they don't want a sidewalk. They feel like it's a privacy issue. But they also raised the issue of the integrity of the sidewalk. Aaron had come back and said, well, if we took off the grass plot, which would minimize it another probably 3 feet, that might be able to happen. We still would have to, that would obviously give us some more flexibility when we excavate for that sidewalk. But we still would be faced with the issue of that retaining wall along 3rd Street, all along that wall. So right now, as you're looking at it, it doesn't have a sidewalk, but it's probably about 50% on that street. But you'd be looking at a grassed landscape area as opposed to a retaining wall. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be the discretion of the board and/or working with the engineer's office to make that determination. The other thing was, that's condition, comments number 1. From number 2 was the parking on Lot C. Basically, the most storied part of this whole development is Lot C, the duplex. Was we are going to connect a little walkway with the proposed driveways into the front porch, without a problem. As I've noticed, as I've said in previous meetings, that I will work and put some conditions on the work with the board regarding some architectural details and corner moldings and door and window casing and full returns. But the only thing I say, keep in mind, at the end of the day, and with all due respect to that area, it is what it is up there. There's some really nice old homes that were built in 1900. There's also some ones that were built in 1950 and 1960 that lack the detail. I've always, again, you guys can take this case by case, but you can drive by the 10 to 15, 20 developments I've done in the city. I do it right, you know what I mean? I don't cut corners, I never have. I do full returns. It's going to be vinyl sided most likely, but vinyl siding right now is some really nice detail that I would incorporate into the development. I have no problem working with the DPD and working out those details. One of the things was number 4 was the full gable returns. I'd love to do that. It's a nice clean look. It's just one more step for the framer on a return, and it's can add some real good detail. And the last thing was, I got to say, is a little bit frustrating from my standpoint as a stormwater management. And again, at the end of the day, we're going to be working with the engineer's office, but I never got any comments from her. She did want some more information on the pervious pavers. We provided that to you that night. We provided that to Aaron. That was 3 weeks ago. And it basically said the impervious pavers that we're putting absorbs 100% of the water. And the existing 2-family doesn't really, and maybe you can correct me, doesn't fall under the purview as far as stormwater management. Am I correct? Stormwater management under the existing 2-family?
In the zoning code, all parcels have to meet the Mass Stormwater Standards.
Yep. Even existing properties, though? I thought there was an exemption there.
Existing or new, if it's impervious, it has to be, the stormwater outflow or flow onto the adjacent parcel has to remain the same as the existing condition. If it's built, if there's a lot of impervious surface there already, it's not real clear, but it's basically you have to show some improvement. But where there's kind of just all pervious space, it needs to at least remain to that level. That's in the zoning code for everybody. It isn't if it's site plan review or not.
It's kind of a subjective area. I got to be honest with you. But with that said, too, with the pervious areas that were present at that on the existing two-family, we negated a lot of that by dropping the size of that, ripping up that existing driveway and putting a small, thinner one in the back. So again, it's a catch-22 whether or not we're adding any pervious pavement to that spot. And then, I guess the other issue is where my engineer was, where we had some questions on whether or not the single family falls under the purview again of stormwater management. Is that? They do too.
It's the same. It's
Okay.
the same standard.
With that said, the bottom line is what I'm saying is that we took down a rather large structure. We added a small house with pervious pavers, and then same thing with the duplex. I just think now on December 21st, and this process, this was before her from September 9th. I would have loved to get, if you really wanted stormwater calculations, to get that from her now. Again, at the end of the day, we're going to be work with them with the engineering department on this anyways, but I mean, it would have been easier for all of us to kind of follow that path earlier. It's 3 months later, but, so I guess that's the comments, the most recent comments. My issue, like I had already laid out, is the fact that, the current owner doesn't want the sidewalk for privacy issues in. They also broached the issue of, during site excavation, is it going to be loud, and who's going to do it, and is the house going to fall over? And my thing is, there's a bond issue there, whether I have to bond it, even though it's a city property, I'm doing the work, and if we have any issues with that, there's, 60 feet of fieldstone foundation, that's 120, 130 years old. We can all sit here and say, well, it's only 3 or 4 feet away, there shouldn't be an issue, but when that thing caves in, I mean, am I going to be left holding the bag on something that I already sold weeks before? It just raises a couple issues there that I'd really like to kind of do some follow-up with. But I think I've done enough talking for now. I think if you guys want some feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
Thank you.
Anybody else here this evening want to speak on this project? Hearing none? Okay, Aaron, any comments? I'll come back to you. I know he had some comments that he addressed to you, and I know we have comments from you in the packet. Anything you want to add compared to what he's raised already so far?
Yeah, I can just follow up real quickly. I think David did a real good job just kind of going over the overview of the latest set of comments. But generally speaking, the project itself does now meet all the zoning standards. That was one of the bigger questions. I know the last planning board meeting there was I think 2 or 3 zoning elements that we weren't sure about. And
that's what required him to go to the ZBA to clear it up and come back, which he did.
That was the parking, and the part of it was required for the variance was that the zoning ordinance doesn't allow stacked parking for residential developments with more than 1 unit. So only single-family residential building can have stacked parking. So that was one of the variances. And then, actually, I think it was the only one. That was the only variance. Yep. Because it's 2 curb cuts, it required the actual parking space for each unit. So that's why there's 3 parking spaces here. So by getting the variance for the stacked parking, he's able to have this layout, which I think, as David pointed out, works. Particularly in this neighborhood, it's not in front of the building. There's a couple of things that the zoning ordinance is trying to do there, and the primary things is to prevent parking spaces in front of buildings as much as possible. Obviously, there's some garage under typologies that work in places, but in this case, it's a wide enough lot that it's on the side of the building, and it doesn't kind of overtake that space in between the building and the street. So I think it does meet the, from my perspective, it does meet a standard of, traditional neighborhood standard that's pointed out in both the neighborhood guidelines and the zoning ordinance. And as David pointed out, also there is an issue that this project has brought up by preventing stacked parking for duplexes where it may be a good example or a desirable layout to have stacked parking for duplexes. Certainly in this case, it appeared to be. It's something that we are looking at.
Well, especially, Aaron, interrupt you, on a 75-foot lot, I mean, whereas the zoning code allows 65 or more, it's a much wider lot that, so, I mean, I'm not going to tell you, that's probably a discussion for a different night for the amendment, but something I would definitely recommend, at least giving the board some leeway to make a decision that works for the actual development itself and not just on a set of regulations.
Yeah, right. The way it's written in the zoning ordinances, it's cut and dry. It doesn't allow for some flexibility, so, which would have benefited in this project. So anyway, that's the first part of my last set of comments. At the sidewalk, I don't know, I've got a picture of the site. I've been up there a couple times and looking at the plans. I think it's better to see it at the site, of how the sidewalk would work. If you take away the 3 feet, sounds like it still could be a problem. If it works, great. If it can't work because of the need for a large retaining wall, we don't want to make something look worse than it already is. We were looking at this and saying, well, there's a sidewalk down the street. If you could connect it anytime you can connect pedestrian connectivity in neighborhoods, it's a good thing. But at the same time, you don't want to endanger a house. So I don't know if there's a way to deal with that later.
What about planting a couple trees there to keep that green? You can probably get into your comments later. I think we're waiting for Aaron before the board speaks, correct, Tom?
Right, correct.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
I'll finish up an hour, and then I'll turn over to board members, right.
Okay.
I think David already addressed the walkway, which makes sense. I figured they were going to put something in there, but elevations, we're always happy to work with anybody on design details and finding something that works. And David's right. There's a lot of examples of vinyl siding now that can work and can look a lot better. So there's anything that's great with the cornice. I think that helps with bringing the perceived height of buildings down often. And the stormwater, I can understand his frustration, absolutely. But hopefully working with the city engineer directly, it can come up with something that be pretty simple to deal with. But just generally speaking, the state standards that are required is that it can't be any worse. The stormwater flow can't be any worse than the existing condition. So I think
There can't be any increase, right?
Yeah.
right. So generally, that's all the city engineer is trying to determine. So whatever the easiest
There's a
way.
ton of green space there, too. I mean, everything's tripled or quadrupled what's required.
Plenty of open space in the back.
Yes,
More
exactly.
than you
So,
had
I mean,
before, yeah.
we can argue that point, but that's, not part of this process, I think,
Right,
but.
okay.
So I think that's all I have. If there's any questions, I'm happy to have.
I'll turn over. Any of the board members have any comments at this time? I'll start with you, Mr. Fischett, if you don't mind, then I'll work right down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just guess I'll comment a little bit on the neighborhood character special permit. I agree with Mr. Daly. The intent of that permit as well was to give the board some latitude in design and how the project fits within the neighborhood. So certainly when we looked at that last time, and I think it was Mr. Claremont picked up on that immediately, a little bit frustrating when you're looking at the plan because it seemed to really fit well, and not having the latitude to really address that under the neighborhood character special permit. I would suggest we explore that, DPD explore that as an amendment. Obviously, that seems to make sense. Relative to the project, I think I certainly want to go up and take a look at that. The retaining wall, I was also thinking about that too, on a corner lot. Quite frankly, that can become a hangout spot for kids to sit on the wall. So I mean, I think there's a couple of things to look at, and perhaps that probably is not, as Aaron says, I think in most cases you try to connect the sidewalks and it makes the neighborhood a better walking neighborhood, and I understand that, but this certainly may not be appropriate in this particular spot, and given the topographical challenges of the location. And then I would have to say, Aaron, I don't know if DPD coordinates with the engineering department, but it seems like there might have been just a little lack of communication, or I don't know how, but that's something that for all petitioners, if you know,
We're,
at least we
we're
could-
working on improving the lead time. It's recognized that there needs to be comments sent back to both our department and other departments as well as the petitioners. So we're working on ways to expedite that. So at the very least, if there's more information that's needed, that gets conveyed quickly.
Right.
So absolutely, yeah.
Sure.
It's something we're trying
Sure.
to button up.
Now, my understanding then, this will be coming back to us then, as a final, how is this,
I hope not.
no, okay, all right, so,
Put a conditional, well, like anything else, we either approve it, deny it, or conditional approval, or,
oh, I guess the question tonight, you were looking to
he's looking for final approval. I
final
believe.
approval with, okay, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure. Didn't mean
Yeah.
to
3 times.
have Mr. Goldman revive you over
I feel
there.
like I'm Lowe's. Did they come back 3 times?
Okay, no, I just wanted to,
You see? Yeah, it's true.
DBA with a few times, we kept them one night. All night, one night.
so I think on the sidewalk, I certainly, whether Aaron would, you know, could work with DPD to take a good look at that. I certainly don't think I'm hard pressed on requiring that sidewalk. It doesn't seem to, I think there's enough challenges that not warrant having that in there at this time. So I certainly would not have a problem with that. And obviously, subject to you working out with the engineering department relative to the,
One of the things regarding sidewalks that I want to make known that there's that existing sidewalk on Beacon Street that we're going to have to expose and take a curbing out. And in an email through Aaron to me, well, to Aaron I was sent, was she wants it repaired. Obviously, we'll repair that sidewalk on 135 Beacon Street. I want to make that, if you want to put that a condition, I always do that, but it's one of the conditions that I think should probably be mentioned.
now, just to clarify on the returns, because I know on the plans we had looked at one of the homes, I believe the duplex didn't have the full returns and the
Yeah, but
single did.
we're gonna do that.
Okay, so that would be,
Correct,
okay,
yeah.
that would be full returns on both the duplex and the single family.
Yeah.
No, I think, again, I'm pleased with the outcome. This worked out just the way it was supposed to. You went back to the neighborhood,
Yeah.
came back with a much better plan that fit. As you pointed out, the parking that you were trying to adhere to in your initial plan really didn't fit the character of the neighborhood. So
No.
what you came back with, I think, was something that fit, and so I certainly commend you for the process, that's for
Thanks.
sure.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman. Rich, any questions, comments?
Yeah, I just have a couple of points I'd like to address. One is the parking issue. This is my neighborhood. I live about 6 houses down the street on
Yep.
Beacon Street. In one of those nice old
Yes,
1890s houses.
I love those
It's a
houses.
great neighborhood.
Yes.
And I can tell you that the parking up there is just like you have it here, to the side.
Yep.
In fact, a neighbor of mine across the street just put in one last
Yeah.
fall, and he's stacking 2 cars in it. So this, I think, just blends in with the neighborhood beautifully. I don't see that as an issue at
These
all.
pavers are really nice looking, by the way, like,
I've
really
seen them,
nice
yeah.
looking. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue personally with that. And the second thing is the sidewalk. I don't know, Aaron, what is the background on this sidewalk, and what's the reason it's there to begin with? Just
Traffic engineer.
Traffic engineer?
Why the proposed sidewalks on Third Street?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the traffic engineer made in his comments originally that it'd be good to at the sidewalk get connected from the parcel that's on the east side of parcel C and the existing building. So you would have a continuous sidewalk on that side of Third Street to the intersection of Beacon and Third.
okay, all right, there is a piece there.
So, and just typically, we would recommend that where there's a missing link in a sidewalk, in a residential neighborhood at least, it's nice to be able to connect those. Particularly, I mean, especially, I mean, there's a hierarchy to these things, obviously, but, you know, if you're in a neighborhood where you're next to or close to a school, or there's some businesses, you want to make sure that you have that network. In a residential neighborhood where there isn't that much like this, there isn't really a school nearby or commercial, it's still nice to have that for safety
Yeah, all right,
and just,
I
you know,
understand.
separating those two modes of traffic. And then I think actually it was one of other Mr. Daly's projects on Stedman Street where
Oh, yeah.
we recommended it, but in light industrial zone, it probably doesn't make sense as much, or at least as much as in a residential zone. So that's kind of, where we come down on the sidewalk. If at all, we can make a continuous network, for pedestrians. We try to connect those links.
I recall, we usually try to encourage it, and if it works, absolutely.
I gotta make it clear, and I think you guys remember this, I was able and willing to do so, and then we went out there and said, because we didn't pay much attention to the existing setbacks and stuff, and we went up there and said, oh boy, we got a real issue here, and then we started doing the real calculations going, we got a 3 or 4 or 5 foot retaining wall, concrete wall, and then we get the integrity of the field stone. And I've dealt with that before, with digging around in additions, and it's been a nightmare, so.
All right, my observation, sitting here, it's hard to visualize, even though I've lived up there for years. The sidewalks throughout that neighborhood are kind of sporadic.
Yes.
On
If you
that
look at
end
that
of
street,
Beacon Street. I know along our side of Beacon Street, which is this side,
it has it.
I have one in front of my house only because the owner years ago had it put in. And there are no sidewalks there.
Yeah.
There's one on the other side. So I don't really have an issue with just eliminating it, if that makes
Third
the
Street, right,
project.
okay.
Yeah, on Third Street, what's being proposed here. I don't have an issue with that. It seems to me it's not gonna get a lot of use anyway. Although it'd look nice and, service some pedestrian traffic, I don't think it's a real
What I can do,
necessity.
and what I can do, and I will do if you guys would like, we can still put the marker painting from the corner on Third and Beacon across, put the crosswalk, which I think is fitting, and then maybe across the street, and if you guys would like that, I don't know if that's a trade-off, to put at least a crosswalk to paint it. Would I need to be with the city? Would that be an issue if we did that, the painting for the
No, I
crosswalk?
don't think so, no.
That's all.
I don't know,
Okay. Okay, Mr. Claremont, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments. I do appreciate that you went the extra step to go to the ZBA to get a variance on the parking, because it's a much better project the way that you have it right now. And as you suggested, that's probably something that we can look into at some point. Maybe that's an item that we could change our ordinance so that perhaps we can waive it as a board rather than having applicant go to the ZBA, because it may come up more often. I would agree with my colleagues, it doesn't make sense under the circumstances to put the sidewalk on Third Street with the possibility of undermining your foundation and the fact that it's not 100% sidewalks up there anyway, so it doesn't really add that much, so I'd certainly agree that that's appropriate. I was just looking at some notes from the last time you were in, and one of the things we discussed was a fence along the property line if desired by the neighbor. Was that issue resolved?
yeah, I'm gonna put up a fence. The only thing is probably a quarter way down, because both driveways would be back to back, so I can't put a 6-foot fence up to the corner, up to the front of the properties, because then if you're backing out, you're not gonna be able to see. So we're gonna have to do a 4-foot and then extend it all the way back to the corner.
Okay, so you're all set with that?
Yeah.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, I only have a couple of questions. I think you did a very good job on the project. I think this was basically a balancing test between us and the ZBA on the neighborhood character in the zoning regulation.
Yep.
And I give you credit for taking all the necessary steps to achieve that, between us, meeting with the neighbors, coming back, going before the zoning board of appeals, then coming back before us again. I know with the sidewalk, I don't have a problem with waiving it. I know when I did the site visit there in the past, I parked where that would be, and I did walk up that slope and look in the
Yeah.
window.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a slope. And I
yes.
can understand that,
Sure.
you know, I know your intentions are to do so. If you're gonna fix the sidewalk on Beacon Street, I give you credit for that. You know, people will utilize it. And even I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, when the people up on Third Street testified about their little hideaway, there's not gonna be a lot of foot traffic up there.
No.
You know, I think we exposed them the night of the public hearing, is what they basically what they were saying.
Yeah.
I think they were saying they're hidden gem up there. You know, Mr. Genman even commented on it and everything else. So I think, you know, and the street is of adequate width, so people could still walk by that way. And I know, like you say, and then if you put the stone wall up, we're gonna hear about the neighborhood for neighborhood character, how they're gonna feel about the stone wall.
Yeah.
Well, that
It's
wasn't
not
addressed.
gonna look pretty.
That's what I'm thinking of, you know, we haven't had that comment back, and then
We
we
never got
approved.
into that, and it's,
Right, because it wasn't an issue at the time. So I think, you know, we encourage the sidewalk when you can get them. If you can't get them.
and none of the butters ever mentioned anything about sidewalks, wanting them or needing them, so.
I think most of them are concerned about, you know, your back neighbor to the property line, the side neighbor to the property line, and you did the shrubs, and you did the fence, and,
Yep.
and as Rich says, how he lives up there, it's sporadic with the sidewalks, and I give you credit, you know, to try to put it in where you thought it was feasible. You're gonna repair it on Beacon Street, and I think the only, conditions they said was, you know, if we could put in, the condition that you repair the sidewalk on Beacon, work with the architectural design in the engineer office, I have no problem with the project at all.
One other thing, with all due respect to one of the neighbors that started in the original one, and I wanted to get, I haven't talked to him at all, but he had come up here and he got lost in the multitude of other things that arose. Was he wanted heating, what do you want, the AC condensers in the back?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
noise
so-
or something, you said you tried
The
to call
noise,
that
they don't make noise, but if that's one of the, I just don't want to, I want to heed his, I want to respect his, his request, if that's a condition.
Yeah, I mean, if you can put them in the rear, that's fine.
We're gonna try, we'll do everything, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
So I mean, like you said, if you have no problem with just going along with the architectural design, any comment there for the engineering office, and as well as you indicated by conditional approval to repair the Beacon Street, I'd be in favor of those conditions as any others that may be proposed by other board members. So, having said that, any of the board member have any comments? Or?
I'd just like to make one more comment
Sure.
about it really is about the parking argument, I guess. By doing the parking this way, again, I feel strongly that it doesn't deter from the neighborhood character. But you really open up the backyards of these parcels to
Yes.
nice green space, much
Right.
better than it was before.
Right.
And I personally really like that. I think it's better for family.
I fought for this because I've done multiple duplex under that zoning code with the park in the back, and it just, what you do is you end up putting everything up front, you're 10 feet off the road, or 20, whatever, 15 feet, and then everything is all this big pavement up the middle, and then in the back, and then the families that want to play in the back don't have any backyards anymore. So at some point, there's got to be some leeway on how you're going to do this. And again, this is a debate for another night. So, that's my position.
Okay, so I guess a motion would be in order here, and your board members have any further comment, or can we want to consider a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for approval with the condition that the applicant repair the sidewalk on Beacon Street. And I guess you volunteered to paint or something.
Yeah, two crosswalk,
Third
do a
Street
crosswalk.
Just to investigate the possibility of that and work that.
Yeah, I mean, you can do the Third Street one, whether Beacon Street's necessary,
Okay,
that's,
Yeah, whatever's.
I think the Third Street one might be sufficient.
sure.
You know, you have that one there.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
You want to add the architectural design and engineering comments?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, whatever. I forget.
One was to work with Division Plan Development with architectural design, basically going to show them what type of siding they'll be using.
Yeah, and the other was the drainage.
Yeah, they're going to try to see if they can work with the city engineer on that issue.
Yeah, right, yes.
I'd second that, Mr. Chairman.
And I think we should add in that we've eliminate the Third Street sidewalk.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, eliminate, yeah, sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and eliminate.
and eliminate the sidewalk there in the corner.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Did you catch that, Aaron, or do you want to get them all? Okay. So, motion's been made by Mr. Lockhart, and anyone want to second that motion?
Second that, Mr. Chairman. Yep.
Motion made and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. And the chair votes yes.
Thank you very
Wish you luck
much,
with your
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice job.
So you're okay with you? Okay. Moving along, we have some other businesses. We have some notices from budding towns. Those are not packets to look at. Entertain a motion to place those on file.
So moved?
And then we have some notices, which is going before the zoning board of appeals. These matters are before us for recommendation only, and these will have a public hearing on January 11th, 2010, here at the City Council Chambers Room before the zoning board of appeals. The first matter will be a special permit for telecommunications. This is by T-Mobile Northeast LLC. The property is located at 295 Bonham Ave, and the zone is Planned Development Medical Institution. Petition is for T-Mobile Northeast LLC to install, operate, and maintain a wireless communication facility on the facade of the existing penthouse wall on the rooftop at Lowell General Hospital pursuant to section 7.6 and 12.7F of the zoning ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, I will say they certainly provided a very complete packet here. And I understand this is a co-location. I believe, matter of fact, when the first cell tower went there, it was actually, I believe, denied and then sent back at requiring that ZBA had to approve it. And this is a co-location. And I believe they're actually, in the packet, they appear to be meeting the conditions that we have set forth regarding the screening and how that will be housed. So I certainly would not have any objection to the way this is being presented.
Okay. Any other board members have any comments?
No, I agree. I would have no issue with that as presented.
Okay,
I have no,
okay. So should we make a favorable recommendation to the zoning board of appeals on this matter?
Yeah, and I'd make a motion,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and I recommend approval.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. Next matter will be a special permit, telecommunication, and this is Clear Wireless LLC on 19 Mammoth Road. And this is in a neighborhood business zone for Clear Wireless LLC to install, operate, and maintain a wireless communication facility within the existing steeple and church basement at the Pawtucket Congregational Church pursuant to section 7.6 of the zoning ordinance. So this seems to be that's already on existing at the church as well.
Right.
And it sounds like it's so within the steeple.
Within the steeple,
and
so
if
it's-
so, I think that's what we try and encourage if
Yeah.
possible. So I make a motion to recommend approval if it is all within the building.
Yeah, I
I'll
would-
second that motion, so.
Motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes, so we'll recommend a favorable on this matter before the zoning board of appeals. Moving along for our third matter, which would be an applicant by Rodney Fisher Senior. Property is located at 1519/1520 Middlesex Street, and this is a suburban mixed-use zone. And this is to reduce the number of required parking spaces for a martial arts school in accordance with section 6.2 of the zone ordinance. I know we're all familiar on this because we did a site plan visit up there on some of the conditional approval. So it appears he wants to reduce his parking spaces. And I forget what
Like
number,
he had 162 or something.
I forget what number he's trying to go down from. I'll have to double check
It was
the
in here, it looked like it was on there. Still met the requirement.
Mr. Chairman, I was actually shocked when I saw this. I don't know if you can recall, and maybe it was just my memory, but I know we did a couple site visits there. And
Right.
I believe in one of the site visits, and this is with the new plaza not being filled, I believe we were lucky to find a parking spot. That's how I recall it. It was nice to see a successful business, but the thought went through my head as we were pulling in is what's going to happen when these other retail spaces are tenanted. My recollection is it was that parking lot was full.
Yeah, I know some of the issues were some of the plantings in between those that they were gonna expand upon, remember? And, yeah. But I don't see where he actually listed the number to reduce it to. That's
It
like,
was on a plan, I think.
but did he say it in the narrative? I don't recall, I read it the other day.
Oh,
He shows
yeah,
us
I don't-
pictures, but I'm very familiar with the pictures after being on site. I remember, like, the first time we were walking up over snowbanks going into the condos
Yeah,
next
yeah.
door.
Right.
Then the second one, a little more out front, was made it a little easier.
The issue with this, and I imagine what's happening, is that, you know, the martial arts place is up and running and has a certain number of parking spaces, and as he attempts to rent the other units, they're coming forward with the number of parking spaces they need, so I imagine what's happening is they're now exceeding with those uses, the number of parking spaces in the total project. So he's looking, I'm guessing, to reduce what he needs for the martial arts place. And as Jerry said, when we were there, it was packed. It was probably prime time because it was, 4 or 5 o'clock. So
I think it was like 4:30, quarter to 5 that we started.
The difficulty is, there's some parking calculations here, and they deal with the Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, 6 to 12, whatever it is. I don't think we have enough information without the presentation to know exactly what he's looking for, how he's attempting to reduce it, how we arrived at these calculations. The only thing we have is the chart that was on the original plan. Based upon that, I can't tell where he's at and what he's trying to come down for, so I don't think we can make a recommendation.
Especially where this is a new development that we just approved with all the required parking.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We had a lot of concern from the neighbors up there by the condominium association.
Sure.
If you look at the
We gotta
part
be
to the
careful.
left,
Yeah,
you know?
we gotta be careful.
So,
I'd rather see a parking plan with things Xed out as to what he was trying to eliminate. And
Now, and I know a lot of times, like,
See what the-
even
yeah.
like when we did the project up there on Wood Street, they came back to us for, when they put in all the different types of retail businesses, it says, well, if they don't have enough parking spaces, then they don't get the occupancy permit. I think this is what it falls back to, is
Yeah.
if they build it, then they come in and ask for forgiveness later.
Right.
And I agree with the colleagues that based on what we have here, I think matter of fact, I think it's going to be a delicate balancing act to try to, if it would be acceptable, I think if we decide not to give a recommendation, is that if, Aaron, I don't know if it would be appropriate, but if we could even make a statement that we did do this planning board did do a site visit, and we observed that, parking was tight without the other retail spots filled. Granted, then timing becomes very important, I think, but I think that certainly it would be beneficial to the ZBA for us to at least pass that information on, whether or not they wanted to do a site visit as well.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely appropriate to pass on the fact that you've been there and seen the parking lot full at, you don't want to guess at, the tenancy, but it was certainly not full, so I think I can certainly add that into the, any kind of.
If there'd be no
comment.
objection, I would wish that we would do that.
I'd be willing to even go on record and say, at this point in time, due to the information that we have in front of us, that we could recommend the denial due to our past experience of being up there. It's a new plan that we did approve with certain conditions. After conditions not being met, we have to go back up there to work with the applicant to straighten out those conditions. One of them was the parking issue, the other one was the adjacent property line with the building being colored and screened, the dumpster, and also the screening of the utilities in the front. But I think with it being the new project, and as we approved it, and what we've seen with the parking spaces, and to not have an actual detailed parking plan on how it's gonna address the changes, then at this point in time, I don't feel comfortable that we would vote for it. So we could, I'd even be willing to say deny due to the fact of what's given to us under those circumstances.
Sure.
I think that makes sense, so I think the recommendation to deny it based upon our site view and what we've seen in the parking lot.
And lack on, and comes down to without a detailed new type of parking plan and how that would meet the criteria for asking for the variance after we just approved the whole project, not recently, very recently, with those conditions. Okay?
What is he,
I would second that, by the way.
Thank you.
Sure.
yeah, so, he's got his parking requirements broken down into retail
Right.
and recreational. What does that mean?
I think there's a difference between the parking requirements for a small store, if it was going in there, or some other type of a business.
As opposed to the martial arts studio?
Right, they have a shared
Okay, all right,
parking
so
lot
that's what
with
that
all of
equates
those
to.
units
Yeah, all
are
right, that might
attempting
make
to be
sense.
occupied.
Definitely too big.
Okay. So that, you get that, Aaron, for that, recommended for the denial, okay?
Yeah, I think I have that.
That concludes the ZBA notices. Any general correspondences, any board members' communications, or Aaron?
Mr.
wanna
Chairman?
fill us in, or
Oh.
let's start with Jerry?
I don't want to, it's a little chilly in the chambers this evening. I don't want to keep
Yeah,
anybody
I
longer
really-
than they need to be,
Should've
but
probably one of those little heaters.
I just, I have, and Aaron, if I could just pass this on to you as well, but, and I just tagged a few pages. I wanted to pass this on. This was actually zoning ordinance and approval for another municipality that worked with NEMCOG on telecommunications zoning ordinance. And I just thought I'd pass this on for us to just, and I just highlighted just a few items on here that I wanted to point out that I thought would be beneficial for us to take a look at. The first one that I tagged and I highlighted was in all of the approvals, and we talk about, you know, we can't deny for any health issues, but there is some question at some point in time, you know, whether or not that would be an issue. But in all the approvals, this particular municipality, they do put verbiage in there that, you know, based upon any advisory opinion or a receipt of scientific information from specific groups, suggesting evidence of a health hazard, the planning board could request the entity to appear for a public hearing and possibly request further testing based on submitted test results and possibly modify this decision. And I think that, you know, at least it puts on notice if in fact, you know, there is discovered that there are health issues relative to this. And then I just tagged another section of the zoning ordinance regarding priority locations for wireless communication facilities. And part of this is to direct it to municipal districts and to, for quite frankly, for the municipality to get some of the money on this. You know, there's considerable money to be made on these facilities, and part of the demonstration of the utility company, they have to demonstrate to the board that in fact they have looked at those priority sites and the municipal sites and made a determination that they could not, and they have it. You know, it comes down to, as we just saw this evening, churches, and then the third priority site. And I think these, again, I think it would be beneficial for us to take a look at some of this.
Thank you, Jerry, that's very helpful. I know we've been looking for information on this.
Yeah, I was
Nice to
gonna
see what other cities and towns do.
I can just say real quickly that the second item that you've highlighted here seems that it would fit actually pretty easily into what we have now. We don't have a hierarchy or a priority listing, but the process does require that they show that there were no other co-location opportunities, so this could fold into that. Seems like fairly easy. So, thank you.
Yeah, the priority location is nice to see.
Excuse me.
Any other comments?
Actually,
Aaron,
I do have one thing. I don't know if it's something you want to address tonight or not. I don't know if you recall, that was the last meeting, I think. There was some discussion about a mass development bond for the charter school to do the redevelopment of this Prince Spaghetti site. And you guys were looking for a little bit more context. So I don't have a whole lot more information, but I just at least wanted to provide you with an image here that at least gives you a sense of how much the parcel takes up, the light industrial zone there. I'll just pass it out.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, too. Get some reading.
The only other information that I really have on this, I had a small or a brief introduction to what they were planning on doing. The project itself, the school was to be located in the central building. There's that larger central building there you can kind of see in the aerial. And then there's two lower buildings on each side of it, flanking it, that would still be occupied by, I think, the existing uses. There's, I can't remember the uses, but they're kind of light industrial fabrication kind of uses. And then the taller central area would be converted into the charter school. It's 3 stories, I think, with possibility of 4. And then they weren't proposing any site work at all, so it would be basically all working within the building. But that's.
I noticed recently in the local newspaper about the charter schools still being existing. So whether that would affect an applicant to try to go forward on something like this, knowing that might not have occupancy, might put a hold on it.
Well, yes,
I don't know,
yes,
but, you know.
absolutely. I saw that article too.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading part of it. I didn't read the whole thing in detail, but it definitely was in bold print, so I did catch that.
Yeah.
So whether that would be like, let's wait and see approach, or who knows?
It's purely up to you guys. I think there wasn't really a time frame that Mass Development was looking for, and that if you like, I can
Yeah, I
also
think we
contact
gotta
them
get
to
some
see
more
if what they're looking for in
Yeah,
terms
see
of
it,
time.
yeah.
I think the frustrating thing is that if the litmus test is the application to the master plan, then it's not consistent. But then comes the bigger question, is this like this particular light industry zone, is this really a viable light industry zone? And
Yeah,
I think,
It comes down to that, I
Yeah.
think, with those.
and I think that
You gotta.
We know we
look
can't
at
get any
that.
big trucks in there.
under the bridge, that's for sure.
You gotta have
You
the
gotta
signs
look
you
at
put
that.
up there.
Unless you let the air out of the tires.
Yeah,
Does
we
the
see
light
that-
industrial zone have
Usually
to
see
be,
that light at least once a year. You see stuck under that bridge up there.
does the light industrial zone have to be redefined?
Now, Aaron, was this, and maybe did I misunderstand, was there some sort of an assessment being made as far as, was there some regional assessment being made relative to this light industry zone, or?
Not directly. There's, I think I mentioned in the last meeting, there's a study that was funded through a grant. I think it was Bill Ricca who went for the grant. But they were looking at accessibility for redevelopment for commercial, well, I should say economic development for commercial properties and commercial uses along the Route 3 corridor, and that included the Lowell connector. And this area is somewhat close to the end of the terminus of the Lowell connector. So it was something that they had, I think, on the radar to look at, but it was certainly not the central scope of the research project. They're just looking at ways that smaller, I should say, infrastructure enhancements might improve accessibility to some of these, either not developed parcels or underdeveloped parcels. And I think this was one of the sites that they were looking at. They haven't produced the report yet either. That might help in making a decision
Right.
like this.
Because, I think you can argue, access is an issue to this particular site in today's world, in the practice, in commerce and in light industry, and how you move goods, and it's just, it's a tough spot.
Any other comments, Aaron?
I think that's about it for now.
Okay.
Actually, let me just, one thing on the Lowell High School, Catholic High School. They've got the gate open, they've been monitoring, I've talked with the dean of students there. We were unable to coordinate a before count before they opened the gate. So what we can do, though, I talked with our traffic engineer to find out after the 21st, the January 21st date, which was their 60-day trial period, how long we would need for that date to be closed where we could get a real and validated count. And Jeff said 2 weeks should be enough. So it might make sense, and I already, like I said, I already talked to the dean of students to wait after that 21st date time, a couple weeks, do a survey to kind of get, it's actually an after count, but really kind of get that before or with the gate closed survey. And then we can, in the meantime, after the new year, get a count for how it's been going when it's open. So I don't know if we can maybe push off the date, because I think it was going to be on the board's agenda for the 21st. It was the
I
Thursday.
think it was, yeah. I think it was.
So maybe,
Scheduled that next evening.
Pushed it off a month. It extends it a little bit, but at least we know we have valid data, and we so you can try to make an informed decision. I do know that Gary, who's the dean of students, has been doing some monitoring himself on the site, so we can kind of supplement his data with ours and have a pretty decent picture, I think. So they're also going to send out another letter or notice to the folks within the 300-foot radius of the parcel. It was a little unclear in their first letter whether or not there would actually be a time for review before the planning board. It just said, it seemed in the language that it would just be a 60-day trial period, and then something would happen. They're going to send out another letter just confirming that there will be a hearing, or not a hearing per se, but there will be a planning board agenda item addressing the issue where this data will be reviewed. And so they'll send that in again. He's just waiting to find out, if the board would like to just go ahead and reschedule that now, instead of have it on the agenda for the 21st and then kick it out another month
Yeah,
at that point.
especially where you have to notify the abutters, you gotta give them a hard date so they don't show up twice, so I would suggest kicking it off 30 days
Okay,
and setting that as the date.
Yeah.
sounds good. And that's it for me.
Any other from Rich?
Got a letter from the city manager's office here about ethics training. in January, Aaron, is that something we should be scheduling ourselves for?
Let me confirm the training. I'm not so sure that the planning board needs to go to the training per se, but I think there is some letter. There's something that needs to be
I had
signed.
that in my packet.
I meant to look into that before this meeting, but I will,
I know
I'll
they-
We have a
have
meeting
more
before
information.
these scheduled dates, so
Yeah.
I'll just put it up.
I remember one time we had it was like 4 o'clock. I remember going to 1. in the
Yeah, I
past.
remember going
Yeah.
to one, too.
Yeah, I think it was late
Oh,
in the
maybe,
day.
it may be.
And all the
I'll find
department
out.
heads were there and some of the other
Yeah, it
elected
was right
officials
down
were there, yeah. I think it was one later in the day. But I know they continue to change those with updates.
Yeah, this is, I think it's new laws been passed or new regulations around that, so.
Mr. Chairman, just, we had, Aaron had forwarded to us the schedule, our schedule for 2010, and I just was, wanted to float to the other members here of the board, is, as it turned out, we didn't have any public hearings this evening, but having been in the neighborhood side, dealing with major proposals coming just before the holiday season to the planning board, it's doesn't appear to be. It's just one more hurdle as a citizen trying to deal with something. I was just wondering if on that December meeting, if there was a way we could move that more closer towards the, having it the first Monday in December, which would be December 6th,
Makes sense.
rather than having a meeting on December 20th. I just, again, I trying to be user-friendly to the citizens of the city. If there's anything major that comes before the board, that's a tough time of the year to try to get neighbors out, and I would just throw that out there and see if we could at least have that one meeting in December moved to the first Monday in December.
I'd be in favor of that as well.
I have no problem with changing any of the dates. If you want, we can digest this, and then we can even bring it up at the next meeting when we have a full board to see if
sure.
there's changes.
Let's go over it.
Exactly.
then we can-
Yeah.
And then I looked at some of them, most of them I have no problem with, but if that's something we could definitely consider, because I know, like you say, a lot of time people do take time off this time of year. I mean, just watching the news yesterday, all the people stuck at the airports with that snowstorm. I think a lot of people were doing, they're traveling, people take time off around the other. You look at, a lot of universities are closed. I mean, they're all basically closed. I know a couple of them are still open this week, and, and people have already started their travel plans. So, yeah, I have no problem if we can move it to earlier in the month. So, I mean, and you don't see any problem with us moving that, whatever's convenient to us, right? I know the only problem we have to do is scheduling for the room.
It's a conflict here, yeah.
The first Monday, I think should be.
We're usually the
was
first and
zoning-
third.
Yeah, so that should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's, and then
The
if
only
it-
thing I'll have to check, and it's probably not an issue, is whether or not the board needs to meet within a certain period of days, if it needs to be 30 days, because if it's, well, it shouldn't be a problem, because it'd be the first Monday to the first Monday, so it may not be a problem.
yeah.
What I'll do is for the next meeting, I'll just look over the Mass General laws and make sure that we're not
Yeah, I don't
causing
think
any
we have a problem
problems
with
there,
that.
but I
And I
don't
know
think there's a.
when we've had issues kind of similar in the past, when, like, once in a while that we've, I think one time we've canceled the February meeting on February vacation week. I think Mr. General and myself were unavailable that week.
Yeah, it
And I know we were gonna propose to put it in the following week, but even like, if you look at this schedule, if you go from the 18th, would go to the 25th, and the next one's March 1st. So you're only talking like, if you did it the following week. So I know, and if anything important came up, I know we could always have another meeting across the hall in the mayor's reception room. Wouldn't be publicized on TV, but at least things do get done. Because I know, even on this schedule here, I know we've been bumped before out of this room when the council come up with with their budget issues. We've been asked to go across the hall, which we do. So, I mean, as an alternative, if we couldn't come in here, we couldn't always try to seek an alternative site. So, yeah, if you want to look at that, and just, we'll get back to it in the next meeting, because I believe our next meeting is on January 4th. So we,
Yeah, Monday the 4th, yeah.
right, so we definitely know on that one. So, any board members have any comments on that, or we can address it all on the 4th?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea.
Anybody else have any further comments, or
Yes.
questions, concerns? None? Okay. Having no further order of business, I hereby request that we have motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we are adjourned. Good night. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all. Thank you very much. Aaron, here's actually a copy of that from Lowe's. If they want to give it to us, I'm sure you can make more use of it.